Good evening and welcome to our 31st virtual prayer meeting. My name is Doug Hornock and I'm the pastor at Mid-Valley Bible. If you're over the age of 25, chances are good you remember exactly where you were, what you were doing, and the emotions you felt on September 11th, 2001, when terrorists hijacked 4 commercial airlines and attacked America. 2 planes you remember hit the World Trade Center in New York. 1 flew into the Pentagon, and most feel that the 4th was headed towards the U.S. Capitol but was stopped by the brave passengers who made the decision to fight back. And the plane ended up crashing in a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. I remember the events of that day very well. Connie and I were living in Michigan at the time. I was working for the Christian Medical and Dental Associations. And that weekend, I had been at some medical schools in Oklahoma, and I was headed back that Tuesday morning. Well, obviously, I didn't get there. The plane ended up landing in Kansas City, and the flight was terminated. And I was then on my own to get home. I remember standing in the terminal and watching the events of that morning unfold on the TV that I was watching. And I watched as the 2 towers collapsed to the ground. And I could hardly believe what was happening. I called Connie and told her that I was fine, not to worry. I had a number of options. There were people that I could have stayed with. But I ended up going down to the car rental area outside the terminal. And there were thousands of people wanting to rent cars. I was at the back of the line, and I knew the chances of me getting a car were pretty slim. So I took out a piece of paper and I wrote on it, Chicago. I figured there were more people going there than to Detroit, and I walked up and down the aisle, holding up my sign, hoping that somebody would be headed there. Most people smiled and they said, we're going to Denver or Dallas or Minneapolis. And finally someone said, well, we're going to Indianapolis and we'll be happy to let you ride along. And so I got in a car with 2 other men and we drove to Indianapolis, and then I went on to Detroit. They'd not seen the towers collapse, and I told them that probably thousands and thousands and thousands of people had died. However, thanks to the heroic efforts of the police and firemen, it wasn't nearly as bad as I had thought. But I got home around 4 o'clock in the morning. Well, that Thursday, my daughter Darcy had a basketball game. She played on the high school team and was one of the starters. And what she lacked in talent, she made up in intensity. Nobody wanted to win more than my daughter Darcy. She gets that competitive edge from her mother. But at her games, I was the public address announcer, and I loved it. I always would put a little more enthusiasm in announcing when Darcy had scored a basket. But that night, I remember the athletic director, a wonderful woman named Jan Sanders, coming up, and she said, we really need to do something to honor the events of Tuesday morning. And she said, Doug, would you be willing to lead us in a moment of silent prayer and then have us sing God Bless America? Now, I was hoping she would ask me to pray and sing a solo, but she didn't. And I told her I'd be glad to do so, but I wanted to check first with Darcy. She was on the court, warming up with her teammates, and I went out onto the court. You're allowed to do that when you're the public address announcer. And I signaled for Darcy to come over. And I told her that Miss Sanders asked me to lead everybody in singing God Bless America. And I asked her if that was okay. I didn't want to embarrass her. She paused and thought for a moment, and she said that was good. She said, go ahead. But then she said, don't sing into the microphone. You've got a loud enough voice as it is. And so that night, and for the next few weeks before each home game, we all would stand and sing, God Bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. from the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home sweet home. That song was written more than 100 years ago in 1918 by Irving Berlin when he was serving in the Army during World War I. And he revised it in the run-up to World War II. And the song really takes the form of a prayer. In fact, it was often introduced with the words, "As we raise our voice in solemn prayer for God's blessing and peace for our nation, let's sing, God Bless America." Now I share that because this weekend is, of course, July 4, the 244th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And if ever there was a time when our nation needed the prayers of God's people, it's today. So as we go to prayer, let's not just pray for one another tonight. Let's also pray for our nation. And let me encourage you to do that throughout this coming weekend, as well as really each and every day that we live.